Good morning, all. I hope and pray you're well today. I want to share a short devotion, a few thoughts this morning on the story of Samson from the book of Judges. It's probably one of the better known stories, I think, isn't it? And one that's used regularly in Sunday school as well. It's a story of love and deception and lies and manipulation. It's one that you kind of feel that would be quite suited to one maybe the Marvel franchise might want to be involved with and making a film out of it. So I'm not gonna read the whole story to you because it'll take too long. But if you do want to go to it, I imagine a lot of you will have read it because it was in the reading plan last week, I think it was. Or if you want to read it, if you want to pause and go read it quickly, it's Judges chapter 16. I'll give a quick recap of the story though, just so we all know what's going on and we're all kind of on the same page. So we've got the story of a man called Samson, who's got supernatural strength. He goes to Gaza, where he meets a prostitute called Delilah, and the lords of the Philistines, they see this as an opportunity to catch Samson, and so they ask her to find out where his strength comes from. And she asks him a few times, and maybe due to the fact that he doesn't quite trust her, he says, "Oh, use bowstrings to tie me up. That's where my strength lies." And she does that, and that doesn't work. She asks him again, and he says, "Oh, use new rope." So she does that, ties him up with new rope, but he breaks it easily. That doesn't work. She asks him again, and he says, "You need to weave the 7 locks of my hair together." And she does that, and that doesn't work, although he's getting close to what the actual truth is there, isn't he? Maybe there's something in that. And eventually, after, it says in verse 16, she pestered him daily, he tells her, "It's my hair, and if I don't have my long hair, then I won't have strength." So it says in the chapter that she lulls him to sleep, and she gets someone, a barber of some description, to come and cut off his hair. He wakes up thinking he's still got his strength and that he'll be able to escape easily as he did previously, and he's arrested and he ends up being blinded. They take out his eyes and they arrest him and they put him in prison. And the Philistines, they're mocking him and they're worshipping other gods now, and they get Samson out of prison to perform for them, it says. Some acts of strength, I guess. Samson prays, which is the first we hear of it. He prays to God and asks to give him strength one last time, and he pushes the pillars in the temple. The famous scene that you see pictures of and images of, don't you? Of him pushing the pillars in the temple, eventually killing himself and more people than he killed in his lifetime. He said around 3,000 people inside the temple. And that's the end of Samson, who judged Israel for 20 years. So based on the story, I would advise you to go and read it properly. That's very much a kind of shortened version of it, just giving the key points of what happened. There's a few points that I'd like to look at from the passage. So first, I thought it was interesting that Samson tries to carry on as normal, even though he's compromised himself in this relationship with Delilah, with the prostitute, and things can't just carry on as normal. There has to be a change in one way or another. And Samson's strength, which is his relationship with God, had gone. And Samson seemed to make the mistake that God's mercy. He seemed to mistake God's mercy and interpret that as it was all right to carry on in a sinful relationship. I think relating that to us, let's not take lightly God's grace and His mercy. God cares deeply about us and the decisions that we make, and let's do our very, very best to honour them in those, and not think that there's certain parts of our life that God doesn't care about or isn't watching over. Another point was in verse 21. It mentions that he sees hair returning, which suggests also that he might be making an inward change in his heart, as his hair and his strength and his relationship with God is starting to rekindle, possibly. Bear in mind at this stage he's blind, he's in bondage, he's a slave. And I got thinking, how often does it take us to be in a situation of complete loss and vulnerability for us to realise how good God is to us and how he's always been there, even if we thought that we could do certain things on our own, or if we thought that we were on our own. He's always been there. Sometimes it takes a dire situation for us to notice that, doesn't it? Another point that I was thinking about was that it ends in tragedy, doesn't it? Where we see Samson being used by God, but also at a loss to Samson's life. This was a life that had a lot of potential, but one that let sin creep in, thinking that this side of his life could be kept for him, this meeting up with the prostitute Delilah. I think I got thinking again, how often do we kind of compartmentalise our life and think that sections of our life are for God and certain sections of our life are for us, and we can keep charge of them because we know what's best in certain situations. Another point that I was thinking about was that Samson had a supernatural strength, which seems bizarre, doesn't it? And we know this because Delilah was asking him lots and lots of times, where does your strength come from? So it obviously wasn't the fact that he was like a bodybuilder and really, really muscular. Otherwise that would have been clear where his strength came from, wouldn't it? And also the fact in verse 26 it says that there was a lad, is what it says, guarding his prison, which suggests that they didn't feel the need to have some huge men guarding it. They felt confident that someone small and weak could do it. And another point that I was thinking about was that as Samson began to push the pillars of the temple, he had his strength back. Again, a timely reminder to us that God had not forsaken Samson, and he was there waiting for him to turn his heart back to him. I think sometimes we can feel that we are far away from God and that he can't reach us, but one thing we know that is God will never leave us and he's always close to us. The Enduring Word commentary, it summarised this really well, so I thought I'd share how it summarised it. It says, based on the story of Samson and Delilah, in summary, Samson shows the danger of underestimating our own sinfulness. He probably figured he had things under control with his own fleshy lusts, but his desire for love, romance and sex led directly to his destruction. Samson was the great conqueror who never allowed God to properly conquer him. So the story of Samson is bittersweet, but it's also an amazing, incredible reminder to us of what the power of sin can do in our lives, but more importantly than that, the mercy that God shows to us and has shown to us when he saved us. Have a great day, everyone.